The streetlight above my pickup truck flickered like a fading firefly as I wrestled with the stubborn alternator belt. 23 years as a mechanical engineer, and I still ended up under the hood of my own rust bucket every other weekend. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could design systems that powered entire manufacturing plants, but couldn't afford a reliable car payment. "I can't wait until he's out of the picture," came my wife's voice through the kitchen window, floating across the October air like poison. I froze, wrench halfway to the belt tensioner. Jennifer's voice had that breathy quality she got when she was excited, or aroused. I hadn't heard that tone directed at me in about 5 years. "Soon, baby, very soon. My name is Paul Morrison." And in that moment, crouched beside my battered Ford in the driveway of our modest ranch house, I realized my marriage was over. What I didn't know yet was that I was about to become the villain in someone else's story. And you know what? I was going to be really, really good at it. The house we'd lived in for 15 years sat in what used to be a decent middle-class neighborhood. Now it was mostly foreclosures and rental properties, with Mrs. Krantz next door keeping track of everyone's business like some kind of suburban intelligence agency. Her kitchen light was on, naturally. The woman probably had a direct line to the local gossip network. I wiped my hands on an old rag and moved closer to the window, staying in the shadows. Through the gap in the curtains, I could see Jennifer pacing the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, wearing the black dress she'd claimed was for client meetings, at 9:30 on a Thursday night. "He's so clueless," she continued, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Still thinks I'm working late at the firm. God, Paul is such an idiot sometimes." There it was. My name, my wife, talking about me like I was some obstacle to be removed. "The plan is perfect, Brett. Once we get the house appraised and I file the papers, he'll be stuck with nothing. My dad's lawyer says we can claim emotional distress, maybe even get a restraining order if we play it right." Brett. I knew that name. Brett Hawkins, the flashy real estate agent who'd been helping Jennifer with some property investments. The guy with the expensive suits and the BMW who always seemed to show up at neighborhood barbecues with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Not because I'm some kind of master strategist. I'm an engineer. We document everything. It's just how my brain works. "Paul's been so moody lately," Jennifer was saying. "I think he's having some kind of midlife crisis. Yesterday, he actually raised his voice when I mentioned the credit card bills. I mean, what kind of man yells at his wife over money? The kind who just found out his wife maxed out 3 cards on business clothes, while he's been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch to save money," I thought. But I kept recording. "I love you too, baby. Tomorrow night, the usual place? Perfect. And remember, if anyone asks, I was at the office working on the Patterson case." Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She hung up, and I watched her lean against the counter, smiling at her reflection in the window. She looked happy. Happier than I'd seen her in years. I stood there in the shadows of my own driveway, listening to the distant hum of traffic from the highway, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly, more like clarity. For the first time in months, maybe years, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Working late again. Don't wait up. Love you." I looked at the timestamp. Sent 30 seconds ago. "Love you too," I texted back. Then I added a smiley face emoji because I'm thoughtful like that. The next morning, Jennifer was already gone when I got up. Her coffee cup was in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim, a shade I'd never seen her wear around me. There was a note on the counter. "Grocery money in the jar. Pick up milk, XU, Jen." $43 in the jar, for a week's worth of groceries, while she was wearing designer shoes that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. I made myself coffee in my favorite mug, the one that said, "World's Greatest Dad," that our daughter Emma had given me years ago, back when she still thought I was worth something, and sat down at the kitchen table to think. Jennifer's laptop was still plugged in by the window. She'd been careless lately, leaving it around, probably because she thought I was too stupid or too trusting to look. She was wrong about the stupid part. Her password was Emma's birthday. It had been Emma's birthday for 8 years, ever since she'd gotten her first computer. Jennifer wasn't creative with security. The email account opened like a flower blooming in fast forward, and what I found there made my coffee taste like ashes. Months of messages. Not just to Brett, but to her best friend Tina, to her mother, even to her boss at the law firm. All of them painting me as some kind of unstable loser who was holding Jennifer back from her true potential. "Paul's becoming impossible to live with," she'd written to her mother. "He's paranoid about money, suspicious of everyone. I think he might be having some kind of breakdown. To Tina, I can't take much more of this. Paul's like a stranger now. Brett says I deserve better, and he's right. To her boss, I might need some time off soon to deal with a personal situation. My husband's been difficult lately. But it was the emails to Brett that really opened my eyes. Months of planning. How to maximize her share of our assets. How to make me look like the bad guy. How to get me out of the house and away from Emma. The key is documentation, Brett had written. If you can show a pattern of erratic behavior, emotional instability, maybe even some kind of threat, the court will side with you every time. My cousin went through this last year. She got the house, the car, and full custody. Her ex is living in some studio apartment downtown, paying alimony he can't afford. Jennifer's response. Paul's not violent, though. He's actually pretty passive most of the time. That's even better. Passive-aggressive is almost as good as aggressive-aggressive in family court. Start keeping a journal. Write down every argument, every time he raises his voice, every time he makes you feel uncomfortable. Build a case. I printed everything. Every email, every text thread she'd forwarded to Brett, every scheming little message to her support network. The printer in our home office, the office I'd set up for her when she started law school, the desk I'd assembled, the computer I'd bought, churned out page after page of my wife's betrayal. When I was done, I had a stack of papers 3 inches thick. I put them in a manila envelope and wrote insurance on the front in black marker. Then I went to work, because that's what responsible adults do. They go to work and pretend their world isn't falling apart. The Hartley manufacturing plant where I'd worked for 12 years was a 40-minute drive through increasingly depressed neighborhoods. Closed storefronts, empty lots where houses used to be, the occasional bright spot of a new chain restaurant or gas station. This part of Ohio had been hemorrhaging jobs and people for decades, but somehow we kept the lights on. My cubicle was in the engineering department, surrounded by guys like me, middle-aged, college-educated, increasingly irrelevant in a world that seemed designed for younger, cheaper workers. My desk had pictures of Jennifer and Emma from happier times, a coffee-stained mousepad, and a small cactus that somehow managed to thrive under fluorescent lights. Rita Martinez sat in the cube next to mine. She was 50-something, divorced, and had an opinion about everything. She was also the unofficial information hub of the entire plant. If something was happening in someone's life, Rita knew about it before they did. "You look like hell, Paul," she said as I settled into my chair. "Thanks, Rita. Always nice to get a compliment first thing in the morning." "I'm serious. You've got that look. The same look my ex-husband had right before I caught him with his secretary." She leaned over the cubicle wall, lowering her voice. "Everything okay at home?" I looked at her for a long moment. Rita had been through her own messy divorce 5 years ago. She'd come out the other side stronger, meaner, and with a radar for relationship trouble that was almost supernatural. "Hypothetically," I said, "if someone found out their spouse was cheating and planning to take them for everything they're worth, what would you recommend?" Rita's eyebrows shot up. "Hypothetically?" "Completely hypothetical." She was quiet for a moment, then pulled her chair closer. "Hypothetically, I'd say that someone should get themselves a lawyer, document everything, and prepare for war, because if the spouse is already planning, they're way ahead of the game. And if this hypothetical person couldn't afford a lawyer, then they'd better get creative, fast." I spent the rest of the day pretending to work on a project timeline while actually researching Ohio divorce law and asset protection. By 5 o'clock, I had a pretty good understanding of what I was up against. Jennifer had been smart about it. She'd been building her case for months, maybe longer. The late nights at the office, the new clothes, the sudden interest in girls' nights out with Tina, it was all part of establishing a pattern of independence and justification, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. I drove home through the October dusk, past the same sad houses and empty lots, but everything looked different now, sharper, like someone had adjusted the contrast on my life. Jennifer's car was in the driveway when I got home, a Honda Accord that was 3 years newer than my truck and had been mysteriously paid off early last month. I was starting to understand where that money had come from. She was in the kitchen, making dinner. She looked up when I came in and smiled, the same smile she'd been giving me for months, the one I'd thought was genuine affection but now recognized as carefully practiced deception. "Hi, honey. How was work?" "Same as always," I said, hanging my jacket on the back of a chair. "How was your day?" "Oh, meetings, paperwork, the usual lawyer stuff." She turned back to the stove, stirring something that smelled like the pasta sauce we used to make together when we were young and broke and happy. "I might have to work late again tomorrow. Big case coming up?" "The Patterson case?" She paused for just a second, the spoon frozen in her hand. Yes, the Patterson case. Very complicated. I nodded and got a soda from the refrigerator. Must be keeping Brett busy, too. Another pause, longer this time. Brett? Brett Hawkins, your real estate guy. I saw him at the coffee shop downtown today. He mentioned he was working on something big. I was lying, of course, but it was a good lie. Specific enough to sound real, vague enough to be safe. Oh, yes, he's helping with some property research for the case. That's nice of him. She turned around then, studying my face. Paul, is everything okay? You seem different today. I smiled at her. The same smile she'd been giving me, carefully practiced and completely hollow. Everything's fine, Jen. Just thinking about the future. We ate dinner in relative quiet, making small talk about work and the weather and the neighbors, normal married couple conversation, the kind we'd been having for years. But now I could hear the subtext, the careful way she avoided certain topics, the way she checked her phone every few minutes. After dinner, she disappeared into the office to catch up on some work. I cleaned the dishes and listened to the faint sound of typing from down the hall, except I knew she wasn't working on legal briefs. She was probably texting Brett or updating her mother on the latest developments, or adding another entry to the journal she was keeping to document my erratic behavior. Around 10 o'clock, I knocked on the office door. Come in, she called. She was at the computer, but she'd minimized whatever she was working on when she heard my footsteps. What's up? I was thinking we should plan something special for our anniversary next month. She blinked. Our anniversary? 16 years, Jen. That's got to be worth celebrating, right? For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something like guilt flicker across her face before she recovered. Of course, that sounds lovely. We'll definitely do something special. Great, I said. I'll start making plans. I kissed her forehead. She smelled like expensive perfume I hadn't bought her, and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to her move around the house, hearing her phone buzz with text messages she answered immediately, and I planned. Jennifer thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was wrong. I wasn't playing checkers. I wasn't playing games at all. The next morning, I started my new routine. Up at 5:30, coffee, and a careful review of Jennifer's digital footprints while she slept. She'd grown careless with her phone, leaving it on the kitchen counter while she showered, trusting that her boring, passive husband would never think to look. Her text messages with Brett were like a masterclass in adultery. Good morning messages that were way too intimate for business partners. Lunch plans at restaurants I'd never heard of. And complaints about me that ranged from petty to completely fabricated. Paul was weird again last night, she'd texted at 10:47 p.m. Asked about our anniversary. I think he's getting suspicious. Brett's response? Don't worry, baby. Stick to the plan. By Christmas, you'll be free. Free. Like I was some kind of prison she needed to escape from. I took screenshots of everything and uploaded them to a cloud storage account I created specifically for this purpose. Then I deleted the screenshots from my phone and put it back exactly where I'd found it. Jennifer came into the kitchen 20 minutes later, hair still damp from her shower, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Navy blue, expensive looking, cut to show just enough to be professional but appealing. You're up early, she said, pouring coffee into her travel mug. Couldn't sleep, thinking about work stuff. She nodded absently, already checking her phone. Her face lit up at whatever she saw there, probably a good morning text from Brett, and she smiled the way she used to smile at me. I'll be late tonight, she said, not looking up from the screen. Client dinner. Anyone I know? Probably not. Boring corporate stuff. She kissed my cheek on her way out, and I caught that unfamiliar perfume again, something floral and expensive, the kind of thing a man buys for his mistress. After she left, I called in sick to work. I had vacation days saved up, but this felt more honest somehow. I was sick. Sick of being lied to. Sick of being taken for granted. Sick of being treated like an obstacle instead of a partner. My first stop was downtown, to the offices of Hartwell, Crane, and Associates, where my wife worked. The building was one of those restored Victorian houses that tried to look prestigious, but mostly just looked pretentious. Jennifer's Honda was in the parking lot, which meant she really was at work. For now. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30, she came out with another woman I recognized as Tina Marsh, her best friend since law school. They got into Tina's car and drove away. I followed at a distance, feeling ridiculous but determined. They went to Rosario's, an upscale Italian place downtown that Jennifer and I had been to exactly once, for our 10th anniversary. Through the window, I could see them at a corner table, leaning close together, talking intensely. Plotting, more likely. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Jennifer's gestures, the way she kept checking her phone, the way Tina nodded and patted her hand supportively. It looked like a strategy session. They were there for almost 2 hours. When they came out, Tina hugged Jennifer longer than necessary, and I caught Jennifer wiping her eyes. Crocodile tears, probably, practicing for the inevitable confrontation when she filed for divorce. I followed Tina's car back to the law office, then drove home to continue my research. Our home computer had a shared photo folder that Jennifer probably thought I never looked at. She was wrong about that, too. Buried among the family pictures and vacation shots were dozens of photos I'd never seen before. Jennifer at restaurants I'd never been to, Jennifer at parties I'd never attended, Jennifer with people I didn't recognize, including several shots of her and Brett together at various social events. In one photo, taken at what looked like some kind of charity fundraiser, Brett had his arm around Jennifer's waist in a way that was definitely not professional. Jennifer was looking up at him with an expression I remembered from our early dating days. Adoration mixed with desire. The photo was time-stamped from 6 months ago. I printed that one too, along with several others that showed a clear progression of intimacy. Then I created a timeline, cross-referencing the photos with Jennifer's work calendar and the credit card statements I'd been too trusting to examine closely before. The pattern was obvious once I looked for it. Every late night at the office corresponded to a dinner charge at an expensive restaurant. Every girls' night out matched up with hotel bar receipts. Every client meeting lined up with purchases at stores I'd never heard of Jennifer mention. She'd been living a double life, and I'd been paying for it. My phone rang around 3 o'clock. Dan Kowalski, my old friend from high school who owned a boxing gym on the south side of town. Paul, you sound terrible, he said after I answered. Everything okay? Dan was one of those guys who could read people's voices like other people read facial expressions. It came from years of talking fighters through their problems, I guess. Define okay, I said. Hell, Jennifer. How'd you guess? Because you've got that sound, the same sound I had when I caught Linda cheating. You want to come down to the gym? Hit something that won't hit back? I hadn't been to Dan's gym in months. Work, family obligations, and general middle-aged laziness had kept me away. But suddenly, the idea of hitting something sounded perfect. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The gym was in a converted warehouse that smelled like sweat, leather, and determination. Dan had been running it for 15 years, ever since he'd gotten out of the Army, and it showed in every detail. The equipment was old but well-maintained. The walls were covered with photos of local fighters, and there was an atmosphere of serious work being done. Dan was waiting for me with a pair of gloves and a knowing look. You want to talk about it, or you want to just hit things for a while? Hit things first. Talk later. For the next hour, I took out my frustration on a heavy bag that had probably absorbed the anger of 1,000 disappointed men. Dan coached me through combinations I half remembered from my 20s, correcting my form, pushing me harder when I started to slack off. By the time we were done, my hands were sore, my shirt was soaked with sweat, and my head was clearer than it had been in days. Feel better? Dan asked as I unwrapped my hands. Yeah, actually, I do. We sat on a bench near the windows, drinking water and watching a couple of teenage kids work on their footwork in the ring. So, Dan said, Jennifer. I told him everything. The phone call, the emails, the photos, the elaborate deception. Dan listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, his face getting darker as the story went on. How long? He asked when I finished. At least 6 months that I can prove, maybe longer. And she's planning to take you for everything? That's the plan, apparently. Make me look like the bad guy, claim emotional distress, get the house in custody of Emma. Dan was quiet for a long moment, watching the kids in the ring. You know what your problem is, Paul. Enlighten me. You're still thinking like a husband, like someone who's trying to save a marriage. But your marriage is already over. She ended it months ago. You're just the last one to know. He was right, of course. I'd been operating under the assumption that this was something we could work through, that if I just gathered enough evidence, I could confront Jennifer and somehow fix things. So what do? You stop playing defense and start playing offense. She wants to paint you as the villain? Fine, be the villain. But be a smart villain. Don't do anything illegal. Don't do anything that'll hurt Emma. But stop letting her control the narrative. What does that look like? Dan grinned, and for a moment I could see the tough kid from high school who'd never backed down from a fight. It looks like giving her exactly what she's asking for. She wants a war? Give her a war. She wants you out of the picture? Disappear, but on your terms, not hers. I drove home with Dan's words echoing in my head. Stop playing defense. Start playing offense. Jennifer's car was in the driveway when I got there, which was unusual for a Thursday evening. Her client dinners usually kept her out until at least 9 o'clock. She was in the living room, sitting on the couch with her laptop, still wearing the navy dress from that morning. She looked up when I came in, and I caught something in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or calculation. "You're home early," I said. "Client canceled at the last minute." She closed the laptop and set it aside. "Paul, we need to talk." Here it comes, I thought. The confrontation she'd been building toward for months. "Sure. What's on your mind?" She patted the couch beside her, and I sat down, keeping some distance between us. She noticed. "I've been thinking about us lately," she began. "About our marriage, about where we're headed. And I think we both know things haven't been good between us for a while now. We're like strangers living in the same house." I nodded. "I've noticed that too. I think maybe we should consider taking a break, some time apart to figure out what we really want." There it was, the opening move in her endgame. She wanted me out of the house, probably so Brett could move in or at least visit more freely. "A break," I repeated. "Just temporarily. You could stay with your brother or get a small apartment. I think the space would be good for both of us." "And Emma?" "Emma's in college, or she's got her own life now. This doesn't have to affect her." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Someone who could sit there in our living room, surrounded by 16 years of shared memories, and calmly discuss dismantling our life together like it was a business transaction. "I'll think about it," I said. Relief flickered across her face. "Really?" "Really. But I want to make sure we do this right. If we're going to separate, even temporarily, we should probably talk to lawyers. Make sure everything's fair and legal." The relief vanished, replaced by something harder. "Lawyers? Paul, that seems a little extreme for a temporary separation." "Maybe, but I want to protect both of us. Make sure neither one of us does something we'll regret later." She forced a smile. "Of course, that makes sense." But I could see her mind working, recalculating, adjusting her strategy to account for this unexpected development. She'd expected me to just pack a bag and leave. Instead, I was talking about lawyers and legal protection. "I'm going to make some calls tomorrow," I said. "See what our options are." "Good. That's very mature of you." I went to bed that night with a plan forming in my mind. Jennifer wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I'd been studying the rules a lot longer than she thought. And I was very, very good at rules. I didn't call a lawyer the next morning. Instead, I called in sick again and drove to the county courthouse to do some research of my own. Public records are a beautiful thing when you know how to use them, and 23 years of engineering had taught me how to dig through databases and find patterns. What I found was interesting. Brett Hawkins, successful real estate agent and my wife's lover, had some financial problems that weren't immediately obvious. 3 liens against his properties in the past 2 years. A foreclosure on a rental property that he'd managed to keep quiet. And a bankruptcy filing from 7 years ago that had been sealed but left traces in the public record. Brett wasn't the successful businessman he pretended to be. He was drowning, and Jennifer was his life raft. A successful lawyer with a stable husband who could be manipulated into a favorable divorce settlement. I printed everything and added it to my growing file. My next stop was Jennifer's law firm, not to confront anyone, just to observe. I parked across the street again and waited. At lunchtime, Jennifer came out alone and walked to a small cafe 2 blocks away. I followed on foot, staying far enough back to avoid being seen. She was meeting someone, but it wasn't Brett. It was a man I didn't recognize. 50s, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that comes with money and power. They sat at a corner table, and even from across the cafe, I could see this was a serious conversation. I ordered coffee and found a seat where I could watch them without being obvious. The man was doing most of the talking, gesturing occasionally, while Jennifer listened intently and took notes. At one point, he slid a business card across the table. Jennifer looked at it and nodded. When they finished, the man paid the check and left first. Jennifer sat alone for a few minutes, studying the business card, then put it in her purse and walked back toward her office. I waited until she was out of sight, then approached the waitress who'd served them. "Excuse me," I said, putting on my most harmless smile. "That man who just left? I think he's a client of mine, but I can't remember his name. Tall guy, gray suit?" The waitress looked uncertain. "I don't know if I should." I pulled out a $20 bill. "It's important. I'm supposed to meet with him next week, but I lost his contact information." "Mr. Davidson," she said, pocketing the 20. "He comes in here sometimes. I think he's a lawyer or something." Davidson. I'd heard that name before, but I couldn't place it. I spent the rest of the afternoon at the public library, using their computers to research Davidson. What I found made my stomach turn. Richard Davidson was a divorce attorney. Not just any divorce attorney, but the kind who specialized in high-conflict cases. The kind who was known for destroying opposing parties financially and emotionally. His website featured testimonials from women who'd gotten everything they deserved from their ex-husbands. Jennifer wasn't just planning to leave me, she was planning to annihilate me. I drove home in a fog of anger and disbelief. This wasn't about growing apart or needing space. This was about greed, pure and simple. Jennifer had found herself a sugar daddy in Brett, and now she wanted to cash out of our marriage with maximum profit. But she'd made another mistake. She'd shown her hand too early. My phone rang as I pulled into the driveway. Emma, calling from college. "Hi, Dad. How are you?" Emma was a junior at Ohio State, studying journalism, and she'd inherited her mother's intelligence along with my stubborn streak. She was also the one person in this whole mess who was completely innocent. "I'm fine, sweetheart. How are classes going?" "Good. Listen, I'm coming home this weekend for the homecoming dance at my old high school. Mom said she'd pick me up, but something came up with work. Could you get me instead?" "Of course. What time?" "Friday afternoon, around 3. And Dad, is everything okay at home? Mom seemed weird when I talked to her yesterday." Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes. "Everything's fine," I lied. "Your mom's just stressed about work." "Okay, I love you, Dad." "I love you too, Em." After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a long time, thinking. Emma was coming home this weekend. Jennifer would be on her best behavior, playing the loving wife and mother. It would be the perfect time to make my first move. I went inside and found Jennifer in the kitchen, making dinner. She looked up when I came in, and I saw her trying to read my expression. "How did the lawyer consultation go?" she asked. "I didn't call anyone today, decided to think about it more first." She relaxed slightly. "That's probably smart. No need to rush into anything." "Actually, I've been thinking about what you said, about taking a break." "And?" "Maybe you're right. Maybe some space would be good for us." Her face lit up with genuine happiness for the first time in months. "Really? You mean it?" "I mean it. But I want to do this right. If I'm going to move out, even temporarily, I want to make sure the house is taken care of. The mortgage, the utilities, maintenance, all of that." "Of course. We can work all that out." "I've been thinking I might stay with Dan for a while. He's got that apartment above the gym that he's been trying to rent out. It would be perfect." This was a lie. Dan didn't have an apartment above the gym, but Jennifer didn't know that. "That sounds perfect," she said. "When were you thinking of moving?" "Maybe next week? That would give us the weekend with Emma, and then I could start looking for a more permanent place." She nodded eagerly. "Yes, that sounds like a good plan." We ate dinner in a better mood than we'd shared in months. Jennifer was practically glowing with relief and anticipation. She probably couldn't wait to call Brett and tell him the good news. After dinner, she disappeared into the office again, and I could hear her talking quietly on the phone. I didn't need to eavesdrop this time. I knew exactly what she was saying. Instead, I went down to the basement and started moving things around. Old boxes, holiday decorations, the kind of stuff that accumulates in a house over 16 years. I was looking for something specific, and I found it in a box labeled Emma's School Stuff. A small digital recorder I'd bought years ago when Emma was in elementary school and having trouble with a teacher. I'd recorded a parent-teacher conference to make sure I had an accurate record of what was said. The recorder was old, but it still worked, and it was small enough to hide almost anywhere. I tested it, made sure the battery was charged, then put it in my pocket. The next morning, Jennifer was up early and in an excellent mood. She hummed while she made coffee, kissed me goodbye like she meant it, and practically skipped out to her car. I waited until she was gone, then called Dan. "I need a favor," I said when he answered. "Name it." "I need you to back up a story. If anyone asks, you've got an apartment above the gym that I'm going to rent." "We going to war?" "We're going to war." "Good. About time. What do you need me to do?" I explained the plan, and Dan listened without comment. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You sure about this, Paul? Once you start down this road, there's no going back." "She started down this road 6 months ago. I'm just catching up." "All right, then. Let's give her a war she won't forget." That afternoon, I picked up Emma from college. She was waiting outside her dorm with a small suitcase, looking older and more mature than I remembered. College was good for her. "Dad!" She hugged me tightly, and for a moment everything else faded away. This was what mattered. Not the house, not the money, not even my wounded pride. Emma was what mattered. How's my favorite daughter? I'm your only daughter, Dad. Details? We drove home through the October afternoon, talking about her classes, her friends, her plans for after graduation. She wanted to be a journalist, maybe work for a newspaper or a magazine. She had dreams and ambitions and a bright future ahead of her. I wasn't going to let Jennifer destroy that with her games. Jennifer was already home when we arrived, and she threw herself into the role of loving mother with Oscar-worthy performance. She'd made Emma's favorite dinner, bought her favorite wine. Emma was 21 now, technically legal, and seemed genuinely happy to have her home. For a moment, watching my wife and daughter laugh together over some story from Emma's sorority, I almost wavered. This was the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. This was the family I'd worked so hard to build and protect. But then Jennifer's phone buzzed with a text message, and I saw her face change as she read it. Just for a second, but long enough for me to see the guilty excitement she couldn't quite hide. "Work?" I asked innocently. "Yes. Sorry. Big case, you know how it is?" Emma looked between us, and I could see her journalist instincts kicking in. She was starting to sense that something was wrong. "So," Jennifer said, changing the subject quickly, "Emma, tell us about this boy you mentioned, Jake." Emma blushed. "There's nothing to tell yet. We're just friends." "For now," Jennifer said with a wink. "But I can tell you like him." They spent the next hour talking about Emma's love life, her classes, her plans for the future. Normal family conversation, the kind we used to have all the time. I participated when appropriate, but mostly I just watched and listened and planned. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Jennifer and I sat in the living room pretending to watch television. She was texting someone, Brett probably, and I was reading a book I wasn't really paying attention to. "Paul," she said during a commercial break, "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday." "Which part?" "About you moving out. I think it's really mature of us to handle this so calmly." "I'm a mature guy," she smiled. "You are. And I want you to know, this doesn't have to be permanent. Maybe after some time apart we can work things out." More lies, but I nodded and smiled back. "Maybe we can." "I love you, Paul. I hope you know that." "I love you too, Jen." And the terrible thing was, part of me still did. Part of me still loved the woman she used to be, before the ambition and the lies and the betrayal. But that woman was gone, if she'd ever really existed at all. The next morning was Saturday, and Emma had plans to meet some high school friends for lunch before the dance that evening. Jennifer offered to drive her, but Emma wanted to take her own car, a beat-up Honda we'd bought her for her 16th birthday. "Be careful," Jennifer called as Emma headed for the door. "I will, Mom. Love you guys." After she left, the house felt different, quieter, more tense. Jennifer was in the office, supposedly working on briefs, but I could hear her talking on the phone again. I took my morning coffee and sat on the back porch, enjoying the October air and thinking about timing. Around noon, Jennifer came out to tell me she was going shopping. "Need anything?" she asked. "I'm good. Take your time." She left, and I immediately went to work. First, I placed the digital recorder in her office, hidden behind some law books where it wouldn't be found but would pick up any conversations. Then I went through her desk drawers, looking for anything I might have missed. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of legal pads, I found a folder labeled Personal. Inside were printouts of emails I'd never seen before, all between Jennifer and her mother. "Paul's finally agreed to move out," Jennifer had written. "I can't believe how easy this was. He actually thinks this is his idea." Her mother's response, "Men are so predictable. Your father was the same way. The key is making them think they're in control while you pull the strings. Brett says once Paul's out of the house, we can move faster on the divorce. His lawyer thinks we can get everything, the house, his pension, maybe even alimony if we play it right. You deserve it, honey. After all these years of being married to that boring little man, you deserve to be happy." Boring little man. That's what I was to my mother-in-law. A boring little man who'd worked 60-hour weeks to pay for her daughter's law school, who'd taken care of Emma when Jennifer was too busy with her career, who'd fixed every broken thing in their lives without complaint. I photographed every page, then put the folder back exactly where I'd found it. Jennifer came home an hour later with shopping bags from expensive stores I'd never heard of. New clothes, probably for her new life with Brett. "Find anything good?" I asked. "Just some things I needed for work," she said, not meeting my eyes. That evening, we drove Emma to her old high school for the homecoming dance. She looked beautiful in a blue dress that made her look older and more sophisticated than her 21 years. Several of her old classmates were there with dates, and Emma seemed happy to be back in familiar surroundings. "You two don't have to stay," she told us as we walked her to the gymnasium entrance. "I can get a ride home with Sarah." "Are you sure?" Jennifer asked. "I'm sure. Go have a nice evening together." If only she knew, I thought. We drove home in silence. Jennifer seemed lost in thought, probably planning her next move. I was planning too. "I think I'll start packing tomorrow," I said as we pulled into the driveway. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, and for a moment she almost sounded sincere. "I think it's for the best," she nodded. "Okay, if that's what you want." We went inside, and I poured myself a glass of wine. Jennifer declined, saying she had work to do, and disappeared into the office. I sat in the living room, sipping wine and listening to the faint sound of her voice from down the hall. She was on the phone again, probably with Brett, probably celebrating. Tomorrow I would start packing, but not the way Jennifer expected. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of October wind that strips leaves from trees and reminds you that winter is coming whether you're ready or not. I was up before Jennifer, making coffee and reviewing my plans one more time. Emma had gotten home around midnight, full of stories about the dance and her old friends. She'd seemed happy, carefree in the way that only college kids can be when they are not worried about mortgages and marriages and the 1,000 small betrayals that come with adult life. I wanted to keep her that way, as long as possible. Jennifer appeared around 8, already dressed for the day in jeans and a sweater I'd never seen before. She looked younger somehow, lighter, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Sleep well?" I asked. "Better than I have in months," she said, and I believed her. The stress of maintaining her double life was probably exhausting. Emma stumbled into the kitchen around 9, looking like she'd had a good time the night before. "Coffee," she mumbled. "Need coffee." "Late night?" Jennifer asked with a smile. "Not too late, just catching up with everyone. Did you know that half my graduating class is already married? Makes me feel old." "You're 21, I said. "You're not old." Tell that to my back after sleeping in my old twin bed. We had a normal family breakfast, the three of us around the kitchen table, talking about Emma's classes and her plans for the rest of the semester. Jennifer was in full mother mode, asking about Emma's grades, her social life, whether she needed money. It was almost perfect, almost like the family we used to be. But I could see Jennifer checking her phone every few minutes, and I knew this performance had an expiration date. Around noon, Emma announced she needed to head back to campus to work on a paper that was due Monday. "Drive carefully," Jennifer said, hugging her goodbye. "And call when you get there?" "I will. Love you, Mom. Love you, Dad." After Emma left, the house felt hollow again. Jennifer and I moved around each other carefully, like strangers sharing a hotel room. "I guess I should start packing," I said. "I guess you should," she agreed. I went upstairs to our bedroom and pulled out the suitcases from the closet. Jennifer followed me up, ostensibly to help, but really to make sure I wasn't taking anything she didn't want me to have. "You don't need to pack everything today," she said. "Just enough for a few weeks." "Right, just the basics." I started with clothes, folding shirts and pants into the larger suitcase. Jennifer sat on the bed, watching, occasionally making suggestions about what I should or shouldn't take. "You'll probably want your good suit," she said, "for job interviews." Job interviews. As if I was unemployed instead of just moving out temporarily. "Good thinking," I said. As I packed, we made small talk about practical things. Who would handle the utilities? How to reach me in emergencies? What to do about the mail? All very civilized and mature. But I was watching Jennifer's face, and I could see the anticipation she was trying to hide. She wanted me gone, not just out of the house, but out of her life entirely. Around 3 o'clock, my phone rang. Dan. "Hey, Paul, I've got that apartment ready for you whenever you want to move in." I put the phone on speaker so Jennifer could hear. "That's great, Dan. I really appreciate this." "No problem. It's not much, but it's clean and furnished. Perfect for a guy who needs some space to think." Jennifer smiled and nodded approvingly. She probably thought Dan was doing her a favor. "I might come by tomorrow to take a look," I said. "Sounds good. I'll be here." After I hung up, Jennifer seemed more relaxed. "Dan's a good friend," she said. "The best." I finished packing the first suitcase and started on a smaller one. Personal items, toiletries, the kinds of things a man would need for an extended stay away from home. "Paul," Jennifer said as I was folding my favorite sweater, "I want you to know this doesn't have to be forever." I looked up at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe after we've both had some time to think, we can work things out. Go to counseling maybe, try to fix what's broken between us." More lies, but delivered with such sincerity that I almost believed she believed them herself. "I'd like that," I said. "I really would." She smiled, and for just a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd married. Or maybe I was just seeing what I wanted to see. I was closing the second suitcase when Jennifer's phone rang. She glanced at it, and her face changed. "I should take this," she said. "Work." She left the room, and I could hear her talking quietly in the hallway. Not work, obviously. Brett, probably, wanting an update on Operation Get Rid of Paul. I used the opportunity to retrieve the digital recorder from her office. It had been running for over 24 hours, and I was curious to see what it had captured, but I didn't have time to listen to it now. Jennifer was already coming back upstairs. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just a client with some questions about a case. You know how it is?" "I do indeed." We carried my suitcases downstairs and put them by the front door. 2 bags containing everything I supposedly needed for my new life as a separated man. "When are you thinking of leaving?" Jennifer asked. "Tomorrow morning, maybe, after I see Dan's place." "Okay, that sounds good." We spent the rest of the afternoon in a strange kind of domestic limbo. Jennifer worked in her office while I watched football on television. We ordered pizza for dinner and ate it while making awkward conversation about the weather and the neighbors. It felt like the end of something, which I suppose it was, just not the end Jennifer thought it was. That night, I lay in bed listening to Jennifer breathe beside me, probably for the last time. She fell asleep quickly, the sleep of someone whose conscience was clear, or maybe just exhausted. I waited until I was sure she was deeply asleep, then got up and went downstairs to listen to the recording. What I heard made my hands shake with rage. Hours of phone conversations with Brett, with her mother, with Tina, and with the lawyer Davidson. All of them plotting my destruction with the casual efficiency of people planning a dinner party. "Paul's such an idiot," Jennifer's voice said through the tiny speaker. "He actually thinks the separation was his idea. By the time he figures out what's really happening, it'll be too late." Brett's voice, tinny through the phone. "How long before you file?" "Davidson says to wait at least a month. Let Paul get settled in his new place, establish the separation. Then we hit him with everything at once. Divorce papers, restraining order, the whole package." "Restraining order?" "Davidson's idea. Says it's standard procedure in contested divorces. We claim I'm afraid of Paul's reaction when he finds out about us. Doesn't matter if it's true or not, just matters what we can make a judge believe." "And the house?" "Mine. Davidson says with Paul out and a restraining order in place, there's no way he gets back in. We can drag the proceedings out for months while I live there rent-free." "What about his pension?" "Half of it, at least. Maybe more if we can prove he was emotionally abusive." They talked for another 20 minutes about how to divide up my life like it was a estate sale. My pension, my savings, even my truck. Jennifer had plans for all of it, but it was the conversation with her mother that really got to me. "I can't believe I wasted 16 years on him," Jennifer said. "Paul's just so ordinary, so small. Brett makes me feel alive again." "You did what you had to do, honey," her mother replied. "You were young when you married Paul. You didn't know any better. Now you're successful, you have options. You deserve better than some boring engineer who'll never amount to anything." "I know, I just wish I'd figured it out sooner." "Better late than never. And think about it this way. Paul paid for your law school, supported you while you built your career. Now he gets to pay for your freedom, too." They laughed at that. Actually laughed. I sat in my dark living room, listening to my wife and her mother laugh about destroying my life, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Jennifer wanted a villain? Fine. She was about to get one. I spent the rest of the night planning. Not the amateur hour revenge fantasies I'd been indulging in, but a real strategy. Methodical, comprehensive, and absolutely devastating. Jennifer had made one crucial mistake in all her scheming. She'd assumed I was the same trusting, passive man she'd married 16 years ago. The kind of man who would take her betrayal lying down, who would slink away quietly and let her rewrite history to make herself the victim. She was wrong. I wasn't that man anymore. The next morning, I loaded my suitcases into my truck and said goodbye to Jennifer at the front door. She hugged me like she meant it, told me she loved me, and promised to call if she needed anything. "Take care of yourself, Paul," she said. "I hope this works out for both of us." "I'm sure it will," I said. "I'm sure it will." I drove away from my house, watching Jennifer wave from the doorway in my rearview mirror, and smiled for the first time in weeks. Phase 1 was complete. Jennifer thought she'd won. She had no idea the game was just beginning. I didn't go to Dan's gym. Instead, I drove to a storage facility on the other side of town and rented a unit under my own name. Then I went to an electronics store and bought some equipment I was going to need. A better digital recorder, a small video camera, and a laptop computer that Jennifer had never seen. My real base of operations wasn't going to be some imaginary apartment above Dan's gym. It was going to be a methodical, documented campaign to expose every lie Jennifer had told and every scheme she'd hatched. But first, I had a phone call to make. Davidson Law Offices, the receptionist answered. I'd like to schedule a consultation with Mr. Davidson, I said. My name is Paul Morrison. I believe my wife has already spoken with him about a potential divorce proceeding. There was a pause. One moment, please. Another voice came on the line, older, more authoritative. Mr. Morrison, this is Richard Davidson. I think there might be some confusion here. No confusion, Mr. Davidson. I know my wife Jennifer has retained your services to divorce me. I'd like to discuss the situation from my perspective. Mr. Morrison, I'm not asking you to violate attorney-client privilege, I interrupted. I'm asking you to listen to what I have to say before you commit to destroying an innocent man's life. Another pause, longer this time. I can give you 15 minutes tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I'll be there. I hung up and smiled. Jennifer thought she had the legal system wrapped up. She was about to learn otherwise. That evening, I called Jennifer from my new burner phone. Paul, where are you calling from? Dan's place. He doesn't have a landline, and my cell service is terrible here. How's the apartment? Small, but it'll do. How was your day? Quiet. Strange being in the house alone. I'll bet, I thought. Probably had Brett over the minute my truck left the driveway. I was thinking, I said, maybe we should tell Emma about the separation. She's going to notice I'm not around. Good idea. I'll call her tomorrow. Actually, I was thinking we should tell her together. Maybe drive up to campus this weekend, take her to dinner, explain the situation. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. That sounds mature. I want to do this right, Jen, for Emma's sake. Okay, yes, let's do that. After I hung up, I drove back to my old neighborhood and parked 3 blocks away. Then I walked through the shadows to my own backyard and settled in behind the garden shed where I had a clear view of the house. I didn't have to wait long. At 8:30, Brett's BMW pulled into my driveway. He got out carrying a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers, like he was courting her instead of helping her commit fraud. Jennifer met him at the door, wearing a red dress I'd never seen before. They kissed on my front porch, under the light I'd installed last summer, in full view of anyone who might be watching, like Mrs. Krantz, whose kitchen light was on and whose silhouette was clearly visible in her window. I took photos with the camera I'd bought, making sure to get clear shots of Brett's car in my driveway, of him entering my house, of Jennifer greeting him like a lover instead of a business associate. They stayed inside for 3 hours. The living room lights were on, then off. The bedroom lights came on around 10:30. I had seen enough. The next morning, I was waiting in Davidson's reception area at 8:45, wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Davidson was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive suit, silver hair, the kind of confidence that comes from years of taking people apart in courtrooms. His office was designed to intimidate, with dark wood paneling and diplomas covering the walls. Mr. Morrison, he said, shaking my hand with a grip that was just a little too firm. Please, have a seat. I sat down and opened my briefcase. Before we begin, I want you to know that I'm recording this conversation. His eyebrows went up. That's unusual. So is my situation. I placed the digital recorder on his desk. I also want you to know that I have no intention of being railroaded by you, my wife, or anyone else. Mr. Morrison, I'm not sure what you think. I think my wife has hired you to destroy me financially and emotionally while she runs off with her boyfriend. I think she's told you a pack of lies about who I am and what kind of husband I've been, and I think you've agreed to help her because you see an easy target. Davidson leaned back in his chair. Those are serious accusations. They're about to get more serious. I started pulling documents from my briefcase, printouts of Jennifer's emails, photos of Brett's car in my driveway, financial records showing the money she'd been spending on her affair. Your client has been planning this divorce for at least 6 months, I said, spreading the evidence across his desk. She's been systematically moving money, building a false narrative about our marriage, and coordinating with her boyfriend to maximize her settlement. Davidson picked up one of the email printouts and read it. His expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. She's also been lying to you, I continued. I'm not the unstable, emotionally abusive husband she's described. I'm a mechanical engineer with a clean record, no history of violence, and 16 years of marriage to a woman who's been planning to betray me since the day she passed the bar exam. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, bank records showing that Jennifer had been funneling money into a secret account for over a year. This is embezzlement, Mr. Davidson. Marital funds being diverted without the knowledge or consent of one spouse. In Ohio, that's grounds for criminal charges. Davidson was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents. When he looked up, his expression had changed. What do you want, Mr. Morrison? I want you to withdraw from this case, today, before you do something that damages your reputation and your practice. And if I don't, then I go to the State Bar Association with evidence that you're participating in a fraudulent scheme. I go to the local newspaper with a story about a prominent divorce attorney who helps cheating wives steal their husband's money. And I go to the police with evidence of embezzlement and conspiracy. I leaned forward. But mostly, I go to war. And trust me, Mr. Davidson, you don't want to be on the wrong side of this fight. He was quiet for another long moment, then pushed the documents back across the desk. I'll need to review my files, he said finally. You have until 5 o'clock today. I packed up my evidence and stood to leave. Oh, and Mr. Davidson? My wife thinks I'm a boring little man who'll roll over and play victim. She's about to learn how wrong she is. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Phase 2 was in motion. My phone rang as I was walking to my truck. Jennifer. Paul, how are you settling in? Good. Dan's been great about everything. I'm glad. Listen, I called Emma this morning about dinner this weekend. She's excited to see us. Great. What did you tell her? Just that we're going through a rough patch and thought some time apart might help. She seemed to understand. Of course she did. Emma was smart enough to have sensed the tension between us for months. I'll pick you up Saturday around noon, I said. We can drive up together. Actually, I was thinking we should take separate cars. That way if one of us needs to leave early, sure, that makes sense. But it didn't make sense, and we both knew it. Jennifer wanted her own car in case she needed to make a quick exit when I inevitably broke down and made a scene. She had no idea I was 3 steps ahead of her. That afternoon, I drove to Emma's campus and waited outside her dorm. When she came out for her evening jog, I fell into step beside her. Dad? What are you doing here? I needed to see you, Em, to talk to you before this weekend. She stopped running and looked at me with concern. Is everything okay? No, sweetheart. It's not. Your mother and I are getting divorced. Emma's face went pale. Divorced? But Mom said you were just taking a break. Your mother has been lying about a lot of things lately. I told her everything, not the ugly details, not the specifics that would hurt her unnecessarily, but the truth about what was happening and why. Emma listened without interrupting, her journalist instincts keeping her focused even as her world fell apart. I'm sorry, Dad, she said when I finished. I'm so sorry. This isn't your fault, Em. None of it. And no matter what happens between your mother and me, that doesn't change how much I love you. I know. I love you too. We hugged there on the sidewalk, father and daughter, while students walked past us on their way to evening classes and normal lives. What are you going to do? Emma asked. I'm going to fight, I said. Your mother wants to paint me as the villain in this story. Fine, I'll be the villain, but I'll be a villain who tells the truth. Saturday arrived gray and cold, with the promise of rain in the air. I met Jennifer at a restaurant near campus, a place we'd taken Emma to celebrate her acceptance to college 4 years ago. Jennifer looked nervous, which was unusual for her. She kept checking her phone and glancing around the restaurant like she expected trouble. Emma's running a few minutes late, she said when I sat down. Something about a study group. That's fine. Gives us time to talk. About what? I smiled. About your boyfriend, Brett. About your lawyer, Davidson. About the secret bank account you've been funding with our money. The color drained from Jennifer's face. Paul, I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Just like you know that Davidson withdrew from your case yesterday afternoon. Something about conflicting evidence that called your credibility into question? Jennifer's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her hands started shaking. That's probably Brett, I said, wondering why his legal strategy just fell apart. How did I find out? Jennifer, you've been living with an engineer for 16 years. We're very good at solving problems and documenting solutions. Emma appeared at our table before Jennifer could respond. She looked beautiful, but tired, like she'd been crying recently. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. She hugged us both, but I noticed she held on to me a little longer. We ordered dinner and made small talk for a while, but the tension was obvious. Emma kept looking between Jennifer and me like she was waiting for something to explode. Finally, Jennifer cleared her throat. Emma, your father and I wanted to talk to you about some changes in our relationship. I already know, Emma said quietly. Dad told me. Jennifer shot me a look of pure fury. He told you what? The truth, Emma said. About the affair, about the divorce, about everything. Emma, there are things you don't understand. I understand plenty, Mom. Emma's voice was calm but firm. I understand that you've been cheating on Dad. I understand that you've been planning to leave him and take everything he's worked for. And I understand that you've been lying to me about it. Jennifer started crying then, but they weren't real tears. They were the practiced tears of someone who'd learned to use emotion as a weapon. I never meant for this to happen, she said. I fell in love with someone else. These things happen, Emma. Marriages end. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Cheating makes you a bad person, Mom. Lying makes you a bad person. Trying to destroy Dad makes you a bad person. Emma stood up from the table. I'm going back to my dorm. Dad, can you drive me? Of course. Jennifer grabbed Emma's arm. Please, honey, let me explain. Emma pulled away. There's nothing to explain, Mom. You made your choice. We left Jennifer sitting alone in the restaurant, surrounded by the wreckage of her carefully constructed lies. In the car, Emma was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I'm proud of you, Dad. For what? For fighting back, for not letting her get away with it. I reached over and squeezed her hand. I'm just getting started, Em. And I was. Jennifer wanted a war. She was about to get one. But first, she was going to get a lesson in what happens when you underestimate a boring little man who has nothing left to lose.